Well, we have a great interview for you this weekend, as we always do here on Catholic Audio Media Weekend. We're going to speak to Dr. Jennifer Bryson. She is the translator of a book entitled Bread Grows in Winter. It was originally written in German, and it is a translation by a woman that you're going to hear her pronounce her name. I'm just going to call her Ida because her name is German, and I don't speak German. And she says it. She says, Dr. Jennifer Bryson says, many times I just encourage them to say Ida because it's a very difficult name to pronounce. So anyway, it's Bread Grows in Winter. Comes to us from Ignatius Press, as you know. You can find that at ignatius.com. And you can also find that at your favorite online or brick-and-mortar bookstore. This is a fascinating story of a layperson. Actually, it's not a story. It's actually her writing theology, but she's a layperson. This is a powerful lesson for you. And she talks about her various aspects and everything else of her teaching. And this is a powerful lesson for you. You know, as part of Vatican II, everyone is called to be involved in the faith. You probably know I absolutely hate that image of the bus, and that is that the priest drives the bus, or the bishop, or the nuns, or the brothers, or whatever. They drive a bus, and the lay people are the passengers on the bus. Well, what do passengers do on a bus? They do nothing. They just sit there. Maybe they'll pray the rosary, but other than that, they do nothing. That is not the role of the lay people in the church, especially not today. So we want to look at this book, which is a lay person doing theology. And maybe it's something that you would want to read the book and then think of what active ministry that you may have within the church, and that may even be you studying theology, just reading books of theology. And so fascinating, this is going to be good. I'm also going to point something else. If you ever write a book and you ever do an interview, you're going to notice something about Dr. Jennifer Bryson. She keeps repeating the name of the book. Keep that in mind. That is a great idea because, as Hugh Hewitt says, you say the book's name 7 times, and you're definitely going to remember the name of the book when this is over. And that's going to be good because I'm going to strongly encourage you that you read this. It's really important for our time because we have people who have taken upon themselves to teach you theology, and their theology isn't well done. I'll tell you that right now. And so what they do is they take quotes from different documents, and then they tell you, well, this is what this document says, so you've got to do what the document says. Whereas, in fact, Ida makes it very clear that theology is really a very intricate vocation in the church, and people will discuss things back and forth to understand truly how we see Christ. So it can't be just a matter of, this one said this document, therefore you have to do this. It has to be a good study because we've got to take the teachings of the church and apply them to our life. But as you know, I do pastoral theology. It's how you do the teachings of the church in your own life, and this is an important distinction. I got to be careful what I say. One size does not fit all. Well, and people say, wait a minute, but this teaching is for everyone. Well, yes, that's true. But even in all other sciences, one size does not fit all. Great example, we have the science of biology, and everything to do with biology is true. So why is it that your next door neighbor is not going to gain a pound after Christmas and New Year's, and you had 3 extra cookies and now you're weighing 10 extra pounds? I know it doesn't exactly work that way, but you know what I'm talking about. You know, some people do very well. They have a higher metabolism. So you can say your diet is not one size fits all. But all the rules of biology are universal rules. So how does that play itself out? Well, theology works very similar. You have the teaching, but how is that going to apply in your life in a way that you're living the teaching, but not living it in so way that there's no life in your faith? So you see what I'm saying? So this is one of the things I'm going to encourage you to really do a good study of theology as well. And I really strongly encourage you to read the book, Bread Grows in Winter is the Name. As a matter of fact, I said during the interview, I don't know if it's going to be part of what you're going to hear. I said during the interview, this is almost like a infomercial, but it's not. Just she's so excited about the book. And here's the other part of it, which we're going to discuss. Both of us have done translations so that the English community, especially the United States, can hear this voice of the gospel that we normally don't hear. And both of us have a passion for that, and both of us have done that work, and both of us know how much the publishing industry doesn't like it. So that's why we're also thankful that Ignatius Press does that. I mentioned that during the interview. So without any further ado, let us go to our interview with Dr. Jennifer Bryson.
All right.
Tell us a little bit about yourself.
I am a Catholic, and I live in Lincoln, Nebraska, but I'm also a convert. I wasn't raised Catholic. I came into the church during graduate school, and I'm currently spending most of my time translating the works of a Catholic author who's been largely forgotten, but I think deserves to be rediscovered. And her name, which is difficult for Americans, is Ida Friederike Görres, or Ida Görres, or simply Ida.
Oh, okay. Is she theologian?
So that's an interesting question, because she was highly educated. She lived from 1901 to 1971. She studied at University in Vienna and also Freiburg, philosophy, but primarily church history. Church history was her great love. But she was also a very gifted writer from a young age. And after her experience in the what's called the Catholic Youth Movement, which was one part of an amazing Catholic renewal in German-speaking Europe in the 1920s, she dedicated the rest of her life to writing about the church and about the saints for Catholics. But she wasn't an academic, and her heart's passion was always the laity, and to help the laity and to move the laity from faith as a vague cultural identity to an individual faith on fire. And so she's drawing heavily on theology, but she also draws on church history, philosophy, the arts, and she's really interesting because she's not in any one academic silo.
Okay. And I see from what I've read in the book, I think one of the things I seem to get, and correct me if I'm wrong, the message there seems to be that theology is a very defined science, I guess is a word I'd use, but now people have assumed that everyone can do theology, and the message there is that's not necessarily true. Did I get that right?
Yes, so the book, Bread Grows in Winter, contains 4 essays and 2 lectures by her from the years 1967 to 1970.
And at the same time, this was all post-Vatican II.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And so she's writing during a time of severe turmoil, but one of the things that struck me about Bread Grows in Winter is that this is a book for today. 2025, 2026. Each section of it is highly relevant. And the essay you mention is on the spirituality of studying theology. And in that one, she's writing at a time when the who is studying theology and how it's being treated is really changing. And that instead of God being the object, it's becoming a university field of vague religious studies. And that is one essay that I just can imagine today in our era. I could see theology students and professors passing this around to each other saying, oh, you've got to read this. This is so relevant today.
Mm-hmm. And that's exactly been my reaction too. And to tell you, I deal with some people who really struggle with some of the church's teachings, especially in regards to NFP. And they follow it, but they find it at times very difficult. And they find these online people, who make all these assertions as if they are the magisterium of the church.
Yeah.
And it becomes so painful for them. And, and I'm always trying to say, but they're not the magisterium. And,
they may have, some factual information, who knows, some things may be distorted, but this distinction that Ida Görres is bringing out in Bread Grows in Winter is that authentic theology has to start first from the practice of the faith. It involves a prayer life, and that our quest for knowledge of God can grow out of that. But if quote-unquote theology becomes only that any Johnny or Jane come lately can read a few books and say, I'm a theologian, we have detached theology from how the Catholic Church has understood it as something embedded within faith and within the body of tradition. And it's something living.
That is exactly the message I got. And I'm glad you said that, because I'm saying, am I reading this right? Because this is exactly the message. And you're right. This is exactly what's going on today. Everyone, the line that seemed to come to me, I don't know if she actually wrote that, but it's just in my own mind, is, well, look, everyone's a theologian today. And she's coming out and saying, no, this is a theology, and discussions of theological topics are very intense issues, and they're not just to be simply dismissed by anyone who walks by.
Right. And what's quite interesting is that she was a lay woman. She was married. So she herself is writing this from the perspective of a lay woman. And the great Catholic philosopher Joseph Pieper, I found just this summer in a letter to a theologian, Hans Urs von Balthasar. In 1969, Joseph Pieper read the text on the spirituality of studying theology. And Joseph Pieper was also a layman. And he wrote, to his friend, have you read this, remarkable essay by Ida Görres? And then he wrote, I wish I could put it in the hands of every, and he underlined every, theology students, especially the laity. And so here you've got two lay people who are hardly going to be the ones to say, lay people, be quiet. That's not what they're saying at all. They're concerned that theology is becoming something, for one thing, mechanical, removed from the living soil of a prayer life. And that it's becoming something that, as I say, just about anybody who's read a few books is suddenly grabbing that label. So it's a really interesting essay, and I agree with you that part of Bread Grows in Winter, and the other 5 chapters, when I was translating this, I just thought, this is for Catholics today. I want to make this book available to them in English.
Oh, and it's funny you say that. If this is a little bit of a tangent, I translate material I have in the past. I haven't done so much from the Brazilians, especially from a community called Canção Nova, into English for the exact same reason. It's we don't have this in English, which is a real problem in our country. I don't know about England and Canada, but we don't have these good theological books in English. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I'm interested to hear you also do some translating. I think that I find, as a Catholic, I think there's a very special role for translation in the Catholic Church in particular, because we are one body of Christ. And I hope that with my translation work that I can help provide connective tissue between different parts of the body of Christ in these different geographic areas. And so translation also helps us to be listening to Catholics from other areas.
That's it exactly. The experience of the cultural experiences are different, but the faith is the same.
Yes.
And therefore, yes, as you know, when someone shares something from their experience in relation to the faith that we all believe, it helps everyone understand their faith on a deeper level.
Yeah, and I think that the relevance of this book to Catholics from many different regions and today is emphasized by the fact that Bishop Erik Varden, who is a bishop of Norway today, he has a great love for this author, Ida Görres, and he told me in an interview I did with him that one of his two favorite books by her is Bread Grows in Winter. And so he kindly wrote a foreword to this book. So here we've got a woman who's writing it, who's from the Austrian Empire. She was born in German-speaking Bohemia, later lived in Germany. I'm American. Bishop Varden is from Norway. And all of us are sharing in this Catholic message now to make it available for readers today.
And that reflects one of the problems here in the U.S., because many of the people who will speak authoritatively, even though they don't have the authority to speak, because what they'll do is they'll just take a particular document and take a paragraph from it and say, well, this is what the church teaches. And that's not the role of a theologian. Theologian goes much deeper than that. But they're also speaking only from the American perspective. And therefore, they're not able to understand the faith, which is far deeper than that, and it has aspects of it that maybe the Americans don't experience, but the different other parts of the world do, or certain parts of the world do.
Yeah. And I think that those are some of the reasons that this author, Ida Görres, had a particular love in her life for church history, getting to learn from different eras, and the saints. She's perhaps most famous in her life for her work in hagiography and renewing work on the saints in the 20th century. And it's one reason the saints can speak to us today from so many different regions of the world, different cultures, different time periods. And this is something Ida Görres loved, is that they're those who understand the essence of the faith. And that's something shared. And I think that comes out in the 6 chapters in this book.
What, now, as I was going through it, especially the parts we've been talking about, what do you want people to get from the book after they've gone through it?
I think one of the main takeaways from this book can be do not fear. Because she's writing this book at a time when there are dramatic and sometimes terrible changes underway. And the audiences that she's writing to in these 6 chapters are it's very clear from the essays. They're uncertain, they're unmoored. And she's drawing on so much wisdom and insight, and her beautiful writing and her prose is really wonderful, to help Catholics step back from turmoil and feeling afraid to seeing the bigger picture of what the church is. And she does that in several different areas, whether it's the question of what the church herself is, what theology is, whether important traditions we have like the priesthood, is still relevant. There's a chapter on celibacy, and a friend of mine who read it said, this chapter could be called, on confusion about the priesthood, because she is helping her audience to understand the deep value and meaning of celibacy by stepping back, seeing the bigger picture, and understanding what the priesthood is. So that's a common thread of do not be afraid in Bread Grows in Winter throughout the 6 chapters.
We're going to talk more with Dr. Jennifer Bryson, and we're going to talk more about Ida and this great experience of this book, which I would highly recommend to you. It's called Bread Grows in Winter. It's published by Ignatius Press. You can find that at ignatius.com. You can also find it at your favorite brick or mortar bookstore, and by chance, if they don't have it, you can ask them to order it, because it always works that way. And you know where you can check this out also? Something I should remind you. By the way, this is not a paid endorsement. Bookshop.org. And you say, wow, Father, what is this bookshop.org? Well, it allows you to order the book, for example, Bread Grows in Winter. And then it actually comes to you as an actual book. It's not an ebook, from your local independent bookstore. So it's a way to support your local independent bookstores as well. And you know how important bookstores are. Certainly, as someone who reads and writes, they're important as well. So consider that as well. So your local brick and mortar bookstore, bookshop.org is an example. Also, and obviously Amazon and Barnes & Noble and all the major stores. And see if you're interested. And also at ignatius.com. We'll be right back right after this. Are you looking for guidance on how to live a purposeful and transformed life? Look no further than Romans 12, a chapter in the New Testament that offers practical wisdom for believers. Romans 12 begins with a powerful call to offer our bodies as living sacrifices to God, urging us to renew our minds and align them with His will. This chapter highlights the importance of humility, using our gifts for the benefit of others, and exercising genuine love. It teaches us to be diligent in serving the Lord, rejoicing in hope, persevering in tribulation, and being devoted to prayer. But it doesn't stop there. Romans 12 also teaches us to live in harmony with others, extending kindness and hospitality even to our enemies. It urges us to overcome evil with good and leave vengeance to God. So if you're seeking guidance on how to live a life of love, humility, and service, dive into Romans 12. Let its practical wisdom transform your life. Romans 12, a chapter that offers a roadmap to living a purposeful and transformed Christian life. Available now in the New Testament. Get your copy today. Don't forget to subscribe to us on Patreon. Patreon.com/Catholic Audio Media. Patreon.com/Catholic Audio Media. Check us out. Check what we have to offer. Previews of upcoming podcasts. Previews of upcoming columns over at CatholicAudiomedia.substack.com. Your ability to comment, make suggestions, even make suggestions in upcoming programs. Check us out. Patreon.com, Catholic Audio Media. And it, as you said, it really speaks to us today. And one of the things that pops into my mind is, exactly that whole idea of, I'm trying to kind of focus it in a way. Well, one of the examples in my experience working with the Brazilians is where I started translating stuff. And their focus is on prayer. As a matter of fact, one of the things the Brazilians told me, and I never heard that until I was working with the Brazilians, and this was after I was ordained. And one of the things they told me was, it says 365 times in the Bible, do not be afraid. So, it says there, do not be afraid. I'd been ordained at that point, I think 20 years, and didn't know that. And these Brazilians were essentially lay people, and they said, it says in the Bible 365 times, do not be afraid. And that experience and so much along with it led me to just understand this is so important. And just what you're saying right now. Now, I read the chapter on celibacy. I wasn't able, because of the version I had, I wasn't able to make underlines and stuff. But that whole aspect, as I'm trying to remember, the it's bringing up the stuff that we're not hearing every day here.
Well, and one of the things overall in Bread Grows in Winter that Ida Görres does, is when I say that there's this common thread of do not be afraid, her message is never, hey, don't worry, everything's fine, no problem. Instead, one of the things that makes her message of do not be afraid so powerful in this book is that she's fearless in identifying problems, naming them by name, and saying, yes, we have serious problems, and here's what some of them are. But God's love for us and love for his church is stronger than these problems.
And I think this is something that people do not understand that often. And especially where, and remember, I'm referring this to a very a lay audience that may not have the background of the author here. I won't even try to say the German name.
We'll call her Ida. Ida Görres. Ida. You can call her by her first name.
Thank you. Okay, Ida. And they're understanding the basics and trying to say, why is this and why is that and everything else. And whereas I come from that perspective from other backgrounds, I speak 3 languages. And that fact is so true. It's, yes, there are these problems, but ultimately God is bigger. But there are so many people who focus them on this is a problem and, people are going to end up in hell because of this and, no one's doing enough. And I'm like, where are they getting this?
Well, it's also, interestingly, she wrote this book before the internet existed, but if anything, the internet and social media and the constant messages have made this book, Bread Grows in Winter, I think way more relevant.
Yes.
Because she's able to cut through the noise.
Yes. Oh, yes, that's absolute. That's the whole thing. As I'm reading this, like, yes. This is, yes. And the problem is, one of the issues that you have that I think is part of this is a lot of people are getting information from the internet, and people on the internet, because of the way it's set up with algorithms and stuff, they basically make money on reactions. They don't make money on making people understand things deeper. And I know that's a very strong statement to make, but in fact, it's true.
Right. But when we have opportunities to use, modern media like the internet for purposes of seeking the truth, trying to understand the truth, and sharing resources for Catholics so their hearts can grow closer to God. And I do think Bread Grows in Winter is one of those resources. We'll use these resources like podcasts to try to do what we can.
Which we do, yes. That's and that's what I'm doing here. But then again, I don't pay attention to algorithms. I just put the information out. And that's I come from public radio. Mm-hmm. And, public radio works pretty much the same way. You're not interested in ratings, although they have a basic understanding. You're interested in getting the information out. Mm-hmm. And therefore, you're more interested in communicating the truth than you are how many people are watching and like or don't like what I'm saying.
And with, you mentioned internet and social media and all this, barrage of information. One of the things that I like about this book, Bread Grows in Winter, is that it has these 6 discrete chapters. So, I mentioned these were essays or presentations she had given at different times. And so readers can read one at a time individually. And so it's also a good book for some who might feel, I don't have time, to read a long book. It's not, it's not very long, and each individual chapter really offers a lot. Like one of the shortest chapter in Bread Grows in Winter is called Demolition Troops in the Church, which is a startling title. And she wrote this in 1969, actually the week before the Novus Ordo was announced. And I find that in that chapter, she has just some really beautiful reflections about why sometimes with some changes, maybe we don't need to, raise the ground. Maybe we could slow down a little. That chapter, I find some of the images in there just really beautiful and helpful.
You're bringing up something too that's unique to the whole reality here, and that is, as a translator, it's not your words, it's your translation, but you're excited about bringing those words to the people who have not heard them.
Yes. And sometimes when I have felt, discouraged or, I don't know what, how to make sense of things. One of the reasons that I've loved doing this work to translate a book like this is I feel that Ida Görres has a lot to say. And so I can step back and, through my background role as a translator, help her voice be heard, because I've just been awed by her wisdom.
Mm-hmm. And which is the whole point of translating books and bringing that message that wouldn't be given to a group of people because of the language barrier, to help them understand it in a whole new way. And you're also coming, as we talked earlier, from the culture aspect. Now, I know from translating myself, did you find certain times that you may agonize over something that she says in German and say, how do I make this come out exactly the way I want it?
Oh, absolutely. And especially trying to imagine, how can I make this come out in a way she would have wanted? Honestly, there would be an individual sentence and I could spend 2 to 3 hours on it, trying to figure if she's referring to another author, checking out the references. Also, Ida Görres loved the Bible, and she knew the Bible so well. And so she's always dropping in biblical references. So I'm also trying to be sensitive to pick up on those with the language. And you mentioned, situations of culture. There's an aspect of that in the first chapter, which is called Our Image of Christ. And she has received a letter from, appears to be a young man, who's very concerned because in the culture at the time and today, this young man is hearing academics and others say things about Jesus that trouble him very much, that say, we can't believe the Bible, or, maybe Jesus didn't really even exist. And she's able to listen to him to really understand why he's so upset by these things he's hearing. And then I find has this really helpful advice about how to understand that who Jesus is doesn't change when, regardless of what the culture around us might say. And I think that that is a helpful insight for today.
Oh, that's excellent, and yes, that is powerful. And I wanted to touch on something in light of that, because here you have this whole story and all these words and everything, and I want to tell you experience that I had and ask you if you had the similar experience. Now, we're talking about this is published by Ignatius Press.
Yes.
And, I've always wanted to say there are things that Ignatius publishes that I absolutely agree with. A few things maybe I don't, and that's good because that's the way a publisher should be. Mm-hmm. But I do, and I'm not saying this because they don't pay me to say, and they don't pay me at all, so they don't pay me to say anything. They are the gold standard of Catholic publishing, as far as I'm concerned. I've always said that. In light of that, I wanted to say is I had an experience where we brought a book. It was How to Read the Bible. This book is like $5 in Brazil. There were people selling it in Portuguese on Amazon for $100 because you can't get it up here. Mm-hmm. They're trying to bring it into, but we approached publishers with a translation and they said no, they didn't want to touch it. And we asked why. He says, because the person isn't known. It was Monsignor Jonas Habib, who's the founder of Council on Over. He's not known up here, so the book won't sell. And we were so discouraged by that. And did you have, and now Grant, we see right here that Ignatius picked it up, which is great. Did you have any issues like that, or did you know of any issues like that?
Oh, I experienced it. When I discovered this author, Ida Görres, in 2019, I was just blown away by her work. And I thought, how is she not totally famous? And what can I do to help make this available in English? And I had background in German. I also had background in studying some translation theory. But I thought, okay, first of all, this name is going to be really hard for Americans. That name, Ida Friederike Görres. But also when the first publisher I approached said, no, and I think part of it was, we haven't heard of this person, nobody else has. However, at Ignatius Press, because they publish authors like Ratzinger, they understood the environment from which she was coming because she and Joseph Ratzinger were friends. And in this book, in the German edition, it just includes the 6 chapters we've mentioned, but in this English edition from Ignatius Press, I asked Ignatius Press if they would include my translation of the eulogy that then in 1971, Father Joseph Ratzinger gave for Ida Görres. And so that is also in this book for readers. And in his eulogy, he draws on one text by Ida Görres extensively. And that text is chapter 6 of this book. So readers can see how his work and her work interrelate to each other. And so I was fortunate that Ignatius Press appreciated the content of her work and understood enough about the milieu she was in to realize, Ignatius says, we'll take a risk on this author. And her work was translated into English in the 1930s, again in the 50s. And her most famous book is on St. Therese of Lisieux. It's called A Hidden Face. And that actually is still in print from Ignatius Press. Hopefully Ida Görres will become familiar again to at least some, because I think she's so relevant today. And I think Bread Grows in Winter in particular, it speaks into the heart of the church today.
Oh, I can't say enough about, and I know this is almost, I don't mean this the way that's going to come out. It almost sounds like an infomercial because the two of us love the book. That's the funny thing. And it's not an infomercial. This is simple. But
and also, as a translator, I make almost no money off of sales. I'm doing this out of love for the church.
And the same thing with the translations I did. Yeah. We love this. And it's when we discover a message, that we know that is not common in our country right now. Mm-hmm. But we know people need to see it. At least I know, speaking for myself, we love to say, yes, I will do what I can to bring it in. And which is clearly what you've done with this book.
Well, I hope so. I'm very pleased it's
absolutely.
now available in English, and I'm happy for this opportunity to talk with you and your listeners about Bread Grows in Winter.
And on the same line, I didn't realize the backstory of how the eulogy got put into the book, because I saw the eulogy, and I'll be honest, when I want to read something for a radio show, obviously my time is limited, and so I go through it and everything else, but I will always skip over forwards and stuff like that. So I saw, that's very good, and I didn't read that part because it's a forward.
Yep.
But I saw it was connected to at that point Father Ratzinger, obviously Benedict XVI.
Yes.
And so I that comes with a special weight in its own. But you're just what you just told us. I mean, here she had an impact on his theology, therefore an impact on the church. But at the same time, people don't know her.
Right. Well, when she died in 1971, the church in Germany was already in deep, 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 deep trouble. And with the types of powers who were taking over in the church in Germany at the time, she was the type of voice that they didn't want to hear. Oh, we don't do that, old stuff anymore, considering the saints and history. And so in 1971, she was sort of swept under the carpet, and she and her husband had experienced the pain of infertility. And so they didn't have children, so there wasn't somebody to carry on her legacy. But because she was so close to the heart of the church, Ida Görres loved the church. Because she was so close to the church, she's able to speak about the church in a way that spans time. And as I said, when I discovered her and I started reading Bread Grows in Winter, I wanted to hand it to people, right away, because I'm like, this is so relevant today. But I had to wait to get it translated and published.
Sure. Is she popular in Germany?
She's been forgotten. There's a really tiny handful of people, including one great scholar who've tried to kind of keep the light on. There's 2 books by her that are still in print. One of them is Bread Grows in Winter, but by a very niche, specialized publisher. When I was in Austria for 2.5 years doing some of this work recently, and people asked why I was in Austria, and I was at a Catholic school of theology, and I told them when I first arrived, I was there to translate the works of Ida Friederike Görres. So with the situation there right now, she's not well known. She's more well known right today in English than in German, but she has so much to offer to German-speaking Catholics that I'm really overjoyed to see that the attention she's getting today in English-speaking Catholic media, I think is going to help her be rediscovered in Germany, Austria, and Switzerland.
And I think she will be able to give a new understanding to the audience here. I mean, you're right. Back in 1971, everything that wasn't that was from prior to 1967 went out the door. And what is even more of a nightmare is some churches took beautiful paintings and painted over them.
Yeah.
It was horrible.
Well, that's why chapter 2 in this book has that startling title of Demolition Troops in the Church. She was watching some of this happen and trying to help people figure out how to respond.
I had the strange experience where I had to go anoint some person in his home, and he was dying. And his daughter was there, and I said prayers and everything, and he had stereoscopic. It looked like it was on slides for like a microscope, but it's an old form of photography where pictures were put onto these slide-like things, and you put them into a viewer, and you get a 3D view of our church at the parish we were at prior to them painting over everything in the 1970s.
Wow.
But I couldn't say, the poor guy was dying, I couldn't say, well, while you're dying, could I have this? I couldn't do that. And it was a great treasure, but there was no,
Right.
I just had to say I've seen it, and it was absolutely gorgeous. But you're right. Statues went out the door. I know the story of a priest who tore up a rosary from the altar. I mean, horrible things. Paintings painted over. I'm sorry, go ahead.
She has a section in here, the 6th chapter, which I think is the crown jewel of the book. Chapter 6 is called Trusting the Church. And chapter 6 is from 1970, by which time things were really bad. And as I mentioned, something that makes her voice so powerful is that she's willing to call a spade a spade. And at the beginning of Trusting the Church, she identifies things that are happening right then. And one of them was a situation at an elementary school where they told the children to bring their rosaries to school to burn them because we don't do that anymore. And so she's very realistic about some of the things that are going on. And even so, she's able to pivot and explain why she trusts the church, and she's able to take a long view.
And in fact, all of that has come back. Statues have
Yes.
come back, which is wonderful, and the paintings and everything else. But yeah, that was a crazy time, and we can all say that it was a crazy time. It just happened that way, and the whole bit. Well, I have to say this has been a wonderful discussion, and I can't say enough about the book. Definitely I'll definitely talk to the people over in the seminary. They need to read this, and the some of the people I'm talking to online. And I've really enjoyed our conversation.
Great. Thank you for this opportunity. The book is Bread Grows in Winter, and it's available from Ignatius Press and other booksellers.
And you can find it on pretty much any online
Yes.
or brick-and-mortar bookstore.
Yes.
So, very good. And from Ignatius.com.
Yes.
And so that was our interview with Dr. Jennifer Bryson, translator of Bread Grows in Winter. And, I was fascinated. I was fascinated by what I read. And I was fascinated with our discussion, and also even further fascinated by the fact that we both share a similar work. I translate from I haven't done a lot lately. I translate from Portuguese into English for the same reason that she translates from German into English. It's like you read this material in the language that you understand. Obviously, with Portuguese, I can also understand Spanish. And you go, I want to bring this to the English-speaking community. And what you will find, which is one of the fascinating things, and this is not, this is not a paid endorsement or anything. Fascinating things of this book, it was brought in by Ignatius Press, because I've literally had the experiences of books that sell for about $5 American in Brazil will sell for $100 on Amazon because you can't get them here in the U.S. And they're still in Portuguese. They're still in Portuguese. And I show this to the Brazilians. They go, wow, that's how important the books are here. And then when you translate it, you have it all translated. You work with them. You go in and translate it, and they go, I went to several publishers, Ignatius wasn't one of them, and they said, sorry, we're not interested because we have no proof we will get our money back. Isn't that fascinating? But fortunately, Ignatius worked with Dr. Jennifer Bryson on this from Ida, and what an excellent book. So Bread Grows in Winter, you can find it at Ignatius.com, your favorite brick or in mortar or online bookstore. And don't forget, also consider bookshop.org. We'll be back on Monday. The Catholic teaching in this podcast is reflected and presented as accurately as possible. The opinions expressed are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect those of the Archdiocese of Boston or any other institution.